Some of this is stuff you know, and some of it we have some new people that may not know. My firm, of course, is McCutcheon, Vaught, Geddie, and Hutz. We've had a number of iterations over the years as partners have come and gone. Most of you know me. I was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, as we discussed. I went to undergrad in Jackson, Mississippi, a small liberal arts college known as Millsaps. And then I discovered that I really get along better with my family. We keep a few things between us. And Alabama seems to work well. So I went to Georgia for law school at Emory University, which is actually in Decatur, Georgia, but it's been eaten by Atlanta. So it's really part of the Atlanta metro area. In 1993, I graduated law school, and I answered a blind resume drop. And that basically means the hiring office had somebody who was looking for resumes without really any information attached. Well, I needed a job. And so that's how I ended up applying for a job in Myrtle Beach and becoming the only person ever to move to the beach with the intention of working. I had a partner who years ago told me, he says, when you interview people, remember their goal is not sitting up in New York thinking, I'm going to get out of the cold and snow, go to the beach and work. Yeah, they don't. That's not the mindset. So I did litigation in that job for about 4.5 years. I did collections law, so I sued people for debts. And I discovered that while I have no problem being in front of a judge, I like speaking in front of groups, including juries. I really did not enjoy standing in the hallway outside waiting for judges to get their act together. And there is a lot of waiting in litigation. Any of you who've had the unfortunate instance to be involved in litigation knows it takes forever. And so when I got the chance to switch to real estate, where in real estate, if you've got a contract and 45 days later it isn't closed, the world's ending. I decided I like that pace better, believe it or not, that frenetic energy. I don't know what that says about me. So I changed to my current firm. Back then it was McCutcheon, Vaught. It was McCutcheon, Mumford, Vaught, and Diggs, I think. We've had several changes since then. Mr. Mumford, most notably, being my mentor, who taught me everything I know, brought me into the firm, taught me real estate. He retired a few years ago. He took early retirement at 75 and immediately started a mediation firm because lawyers don't know what to do if they're not working. We really don't. I was hired to create the North Myrtle Beach branch of our office, and so I was trained by him to do transactional law. That means I help people buy, sell, develop real estate. I've done numerous neighborhoods in the North End. I've written there under, if you really hate your covenants and restrictions of your neighborhood, I've done those. If you hate your HOA, I've helped establish those too. That's kind of what I do. I also do business transactions. Most of you know I've sold a number of restaurants, a whole bunch of bars, a whole bunch of liquor stores, and a fair smattering of golf cart stores and other things like that over the years. There are restaurants I have sold 3 times in my career in this town. Restaurants are a tough business, let me tell you. So over the last 26 years, that's what I've done. So let's talk a little bit about our current market. Well, everybody will tell you if you ask them right now, what about the market? Well, pricing seems high. Well, it does, especially to those of us who bought 15 years ago. I mean, I'm one of those. I bought when the market crashed. The reason I bought was I knew the market was in a trough and I assumed it would come back. Pricing in 2025 is actually up 0% over 2024. We are flat. We have not had increases this year. Right now, we're seeing homes stay on the market for an average of 90 to 120 days. Wow. That is a huge increase over 2022 when the market was hot and we had 47 days on the market. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, that means that sellers are a little more motivated. They may be a little more willing to work with buyers on pricing, on scheduling, on how they close. And more importantly, it means there are more houses on the market, so there's more inventory to choose from. You also have a little bit of time to make a decision. Everybody remember 2022? We were constantly getting contracts where the people had not seen the house. They had an agent walk through and give them a video tour, and they were buying because if they waited till the next day, it would be gone. That's not so much the case now. I'm not telling you pass on a good deal. I am telling you probably got a little bit of time to think about it, though, which you did not have 3 years ago. People tell me, I'm waiting for the interest rates. Yeah, the interest rates seem high. And if you refinanced 5 years ago, you're right. Compared to today, the rates seem high. But rates are actually down in averages over the last 2 years. And of course, I defer to you on that. But in 1981, I want to remind you, just as a landmark, the rates for a 30-year mortgage peaked at 16%. Yes, that's 16%. We are a long way from that. The national average is currently somewhere around 6.81 is what I read yesterday when I was doing a little bit of research, right around there. That's a national average. You may do a little bit better. There may be a program that he can get you into that Richard can help you reduce that a little bit. You may have a seller who's willing to help you out, give you a little bit of closing costs you can use to buy on points. There are other options that can reduce that. And of course, it depends on yourself and your own credit and your situation. So even with the good, not great real estate market we saw last year, 91,000 people moved into South Carolina. It feels like they all moved to Horry County, doesn't it? Yeah, a little bit. South Carolina is the 4th fastest growing state in the country by percentage of population in 2024. And the trend shows every sign this is going to continue. In my practice, I see people coming here for the low cost of living. They're coming here for the low taxes, the affordability of housing. I can't tell you how many people come here and say, yeah, we raised 3 kids in an 1,500 square foot house up in New Jersey. All the kids are out of the house, we're retiring, and they're buying a 3,000 square foot house. Yeah. And I'm like, and why? Because they sold the house up in New Jersey for $700,000. They come down here, that'll buy them twice the house. They don't know what else to do with the money, so they put it in the house. I don't know what they do with the other 1,500 square feet, but that's not my business. I'm not here to tell you where to live. I'm here to get you into the property. They also like our quality of life. They can leave their snow shovels when they move. I have had people come down here and bring their snow shovels. I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't know what you're going to do with that. But, yeah. Now, so do you buy real estate now? That's a good question. And that depends more on your position. If you have the income, the credit, the finances to purchase, and you either need or want to purchase, it certainly seems more likely and to make more sense to buy rather than rent. Either way, you're paying somebody's mortgage. You're going to pay yours, you're going to pay your landlord's. Either way. As far as rates, listen, I bought in 2009. I've refinanced twice since then. Richard's helped me with that. If I had, in 2009, my rate was 5%. That's not a bad rate. But if I had waited to get the rate I have currently, my house would have doubled in price in the time period between when I bought and when I refinanced. So I bought while the market was good. I locked that price in, and I can always refinance. You can never go back to the old price. Exactly. Right. Can I get an amen? Hallelujah, brother. All right. Now, let's talk about, and by the way, I wanted to show this. I printed this out. I thought it was cute. This is the U.S. mortgage rate surge, and the red line is our mortgage rates. You can see they dropped significantly going into 2020, and then they spiked about, 2022, 23, right in there. This blue line is the demand in the real estate market. As the rates went down, it jumped dramatically. Anybody surprised by that? If you're paying less of the money, you can pay more for the house. You can buy more houses. Mm-hmm. Now, as the rates came up, look what it did. It dropped. Now, what do you think's going to happen if rates do drop?
Price of the house go up.
Past performance is not a predictor of future performance, as our investors like to tell us. But I think there's a pretty good historical precedent that when rates come down, prices go up. And so you may be waiting for that rate to come down, but you may lose the price on the house while you're waiting for
was
that.
2020 like one of those weird years where rates dropped and prices did not really go up?
No, prices spiked.
Yeah, prices spiked crazy. Yeah.
Not only did they spike, there was no inventory.
Yeah.
If you wanted to buy a house, there probably wasn't a house you could buy. We saw houses going over list.
I guess when I talk about price, the rate was so low in 2020, but then 21 and 22 prices shot way high.
Yeah, they continue to
rise. I had
rise.
a client, just give you an example, bought a house for $300,000 here in North Myrtle Beach. I think it was 19, I want to say.
Good timing.
And then we refinanced it at $500,000 in 21. And sorry, by 23, he turned around and sold it for $680,000.
Oh my God.
So,
yeah. That's an aberration, but I hear a lot of stories where it went up a lot. Where am I?
You're good.
Okay, so let's talk a minute about buying, if you do decide you're ready to buy. All real estate is local. You hear that, but it is a God's own truth. Many people ask me, well, what should I, well, I'm looking at a real estate agent. I got a cousin who does it. I'm going to talk to them. And I tell them, look, I want you to ask any potential agent 2 questions. There are only 2 questions I ever ask. The first one is, how many transactions did you do last year? I don't care how many you've done over your 20-year career. I've done 300 closings over 20 years. It's
I feel like
not terrible, but it's not great. So I want to know, how many closings did you do last year? And I want to know, how many have you done in this neighborhood? Or at least the area, maybe not the specific neighborhood. But if you've got an expert in real estate in Pawleys Island and you're shopping in Longs, it's not exactly the same. They may be wonderfully qualified agents, but it's not exactly the same market I would put out there for you, okay? Because experience counts. It counts in real estate. The most important real experience that counts is the experience in that specific area. So everything I just told you comes from my day-to-day experience in our local real estate market. In South Carolina, unlike a lot of states where these people are coming from, the attorney plays a critical role in the real estate transaction. Our job is to make sure that the property people buy, they get the title to it without any problem, that the loans are closed properly and according to the instructions of the lender, that the money gets collected and dispersed as is shown. All of that is both an opportunity and responsibility of mine to make sure that you're taken care of. So part of what I bring to the practice is exactly that experience we're talking about. I am not going to be in court on somebody else's case while you need to do your real estate closing, because timing can be critical, especially if you've got a U-Haul sitting in my parking lot, with 3 kids and a dog. You don't want to be waiting for me to get back from court. You don't want to find out that I'm not available that day. I'm closed that week. Because there are lawyers who close for a week. I have no idea how they pull that off. We're here to get real estate done. That's what we do. And in our small area of practice, which is transactional and real estate, and in my little bitty corner of the world, which is really Horry County and North Myrtle Beach, I actually have an enormous amount of experience. I tell people, the fact, if we find a neighborhood I haven't been in, it's either brand new or I'm really, really surprised. And I know the background of these neighborhoods better than most people, simply because I've been in them a million times and I've read the title histories of most of these neighborhoods. So it's important who you select for your real estate agent. It's important who does your real estate closing. It's not just a commodity that, oh yeah, anybody can do it. That's not the case. If your lawyer's not involved, you're missing out on what you're paying to be how you're paying to be represented. So let's talk about your questions real quick. Number 1 issue causes closings to fail. They don't get approved by the loan. Yeah, I mean, that's not number 1. Number 1 with a bullet. And I notice I didn't say they're a lender
Because
didn't
they
approve
use
them.
me.
I didn't say that. I said they don't get approved. And if you want the best chance of getting approved, it goes back to experience in the area. If you are using Bob's Bank out of Schenectady, New York, they are not going to understand our wind and hail policies. They are not going to understand condo tells. They are not going to understand flood zones. You need somebody who's worked in this market. All right. Now, what happens if an attorney sets up a trust but doesn't put assets in the trust? That's a great question. What happens when you get a bank account and you don't put any money in it? Is it any use to anybody?
Right.
Absolutely not. So your trust is worthless. I would say that borders on malpractice. It really does. There's absolutely no excuse for that. The purpose of a trust for everybody, purpose of a trust is you move assets out of your personal name into a created entity, which is a trust, for which typically the person putting it in, the settler, is the trustee. They have control over it, but they don't technically own it. But if you don't put anything in there, you own nothing. All right. What happens if the attorney doesn't tell the client to change the insurance to the trust name and there is a claim? I don't want to know. I don't think it's going to be good. I can tell you that. Okay, what you're talking about there is, remember I said you're moving property into an entity that is not you personally. It's a trust. It's like putting in a corporation or an LLC or even someone else's name. So when you move that out, the insured party should change as well, because the entity that owns the asset needs to be insured. If that's you personally, that's fine. Well, it's still me, it's my trust. No, actually, quite literally, it's the opposite of that. That's why you create a trust, is so that it's not in your name personally. So yeah, and again, that not having that discussion with a client would be bad. Let's put it that way. What is the craziest closing you've ever had? The craziest closing I ever had was the craziest seller I ever had. He was difficult throughout the whole thing. He nearly crashed the deal 2 or 3 times, and I got involved personally and helped hold it together. And we closed in June. And about this time of year, I get a phone call from the buyer. And this is not the first screaming phone call I'd had from the buyer over this seller. And he is screaming. And all I can make out is something about seller and holes in his yard.
Yeah.
So I hang up and I pick up the phone and I call the seller. Now keep in mind, this closed in June. And I pick up the phone and I call the seller. I say, hey, Bob, can you think of any reason the buyer would be screaming at me about you? Something about holes in his yard? Nope, can't think of a reason. Well, all I did was go back and dig up my daylily bulbs. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, I went in my yard and dug up my daylily bulbs. I said, you mean his yard that you sold to him 3 or 4 months ago? Well, yeah. I said, why didn't you get the bulbs out before you moved? Well, everybody knows you got to wait before they go dormant before you can dig them up. I didn't get them in. In his mind, this made perfect sense. I don't know. He was an interesting dude. Can we handle long-term commercial lease agreements? Short answer, yes, I have done that for people in this organization before, and they can tell you about it. Reading a lease is one of the least fun things you'll ever do, reading a commercial lease. I can actually recite portions of Burroughs and Chapin's commercial lease that they use on their properties because it is painful to read. And I've done it about 6, maybe 12 times over my career. But yes, and in a commercial lease, there's certain critical points you really need to be looking at if you're the tenant. Now, if you're the landlord, it's even more critical. But as a tenant, you need to look at certain critical points. What is that landlord's right? What are the landlord's rights to your property? Can they get you out before the end of the term? Can you borrow against your lease? Because you can borrow against a lease. It's called leasehold mortgage. How long is the term? Of course, the obvious things. Do they have a trigger that increases your rent if you make over a certain amount of money? That's one of those really fun clauses that people aren't looking for. Oh, we had a great year. We made $250,000. Why did my rent go up? Because your landlord's entitled to a portion of anything you make over a certain amount per your lease. That's a common one at Barefoot, or was. I think it still is. So you really need to pay attention. The devil is in the details always in my industry. My first statement to anybody who asks me, what do you think of this lease? What do you think of this trust? What do you think of this contract? Let me see the paperwork. I have to read it to have an opinion. Well, what could it say? It could say absolutely anything. Yeah.